Okay, hello everybody. Today I'm going to teach you how to draw a panel in space using construction lines and a string to measure. This is normally where I would start a drawing one class off. Usually what I do first day of drawing one is have students draw for 1 hour with no instruction. And then I ask them after that 1 hour, how many of you had any idea of how wide to how tall your subject was? And most students that haven't been trained don't know to look for that sort of thing. So that's what this string is here to help us learn. And we're drawing a panel, right? In a full-size studio, I would be working from a 4 by 4 foot sheet of masonite. I'm working in my home studio, so I'm just using a sheet of newsprint that I tore out of my pad. And you can do this if you're working on this at home. Make sure to turn that sheet of paper towards you, so that way you have a leading edge, right? This low point that you can see right here closest to me, right? That's really going to help this be clear for you. And the reason why we start here is that this is incredibly simple, right? Well, we only have 4 points, and if we can find those 4 points, how wide and how far apart they are, how tall and vertically apart they are, if we can find all of that, this panel will draw itself, right? And then if you learn how to draw that panel, it'll be much easier to draw a box and then draw a room and then draw architecture. Right? This is the beginning place to start for all of this. So materials you need, newsprint pad. This is an 18 by 24 inch newsprint pad. Charcoal pencils. I like General's 6B charcoal pencils. Pink pearl eraser, or just eraser of any type. Pink pearl seems to work pretty well with the charcoal and the pastels. And then pastels, soft pastels, right? Not oil, but soft pastels. And white and 2 light colors, right? So we're gonna use the pastels to block in this panel, right? And get a sense of what is the block that this panel will exist in. And for the sake of clarity, I'm gonna refer to this drawing pad or this drawing paper out here that I'm drawing as the panel, as to not confuse it with my drawing paper on my easel that I'm actually drawing on. One last thing to say here is that we're going to be using construction lines, right? They're sometimes called organizational lines. I like to call these construction lines. And construction lines are imaginary lines that we use to help us compare points, right? They are like the scaffolding of a drawing. And Anne Gale is a great artist to look at for this. You can see in her drawings how she uses those straight vertical and straight horizontal lines to compare the distances of points, right? Really take note of how she draws a vertical line in order to compare how far over to the left or right one point is from another, and then how she draws straight horizontal lines to compare the height of points. So that's really what we're doing today. We're also going to use a yardstick to draw these straight lines, again, just to help us make sure that our lines are actually straight. So first 2 questions to ask whenever you start a new drawing, always, is what am I drawing and how's it going to fit on my paper, right? So for this assignment, you're drawing that panel, right? And the way you want to fit it on your paper, and the way we're going to fit it on our paper, is to have it get near touching both sides, both the left and right side of the sheet of newsprint that we're drawing on, and get close to touching the bottom, right? It doesn't have to be right on the edge of the paper, but close to it, right? We want to make this thing as wide as the paper towards the bottom. Now, that begs the question, how tall is this? How much of the sheet of paper is this panel going to take up? So that's the first thing we start drawing, right? Again, always drawing first, measuring second. So taking a pink pastel, right, whatever I have here, I want to guess, all right, if that panel is this wide from left to right, how tall is it? And I'm just going to come in here and block it in. And I'm just making a guess. All right, I know it's going to touch the left and right sides of the sheet of paper. I know it's going to get close to touching the bottom of the paper. How tall is it? And I'm trying to just do this, make this block soft and smooth, right? And kind of take my hand and work it into the sheet of paper like this. There we go. Now I have my block. Now we're going to introduce the string, right? We're going to question, is this actually the right proportion compared to what I'm seeing out there? Does this block, would that panel fit inside this block? So this is the string, right? I like to hold the string kind of like around my 2 index fingers like this and get the extra string out of my way, where it's about at the size of that panel in my line of sight, right? And notice that I'm holding the string with my arms locked out, right? And I'm holding it either completely vertically or completely horizontally, right? That's really important. We're trying to translate 3-dimensional information into 2 dimensions. So we have the width dimension and the height dimension, and that's it. So while doing this, or to start this off rather, we're gonna measure the height into the width. How tall, if the height of this is 1, how many times would it fit into the width? All right, just to find the proportion of it. So I start off by putting my bottom thumb on the bottom point of that sheet of paper. All right, again, it won't look quite right in this video here, but in my line of sight, my bottom thumb is touching that lowest point of that sheet of paper. I then move my hands over like they're on train tracks, right? Trying to move them over completely horizontally until my string passes through the high point, and then I drop my top thumb down onto that high point. I can double check. Yep, that is the entire height of the panel, right? Of what that rectangle it would fit in, right? And so I want to hold on to this tight, right? This is my unit of 1, right? I'm going to count how many times does this 1 fit across the width. So now I do this part, right? Now you see I'm counting from the right to left. You could count from left to right. That does not matter. But since I'm counting right to left, I'm going to put my right thumb on that right point, right? This point over here, that one right there where my pinky's touching, right? That is my furthest point to the right in my line of sight. So I'm gonna start there, right? And count. There's 1, right? Now I'm gonna move my right thumb where my left thumb currently is. So I have to keep an eye on my left thumb and move my right thumb there, right? 2, and I'll do that again. It's a little less than 2.5. I counted 1 tall to 2 and just less than a half wide, all right? So I'm gonna write that down on my sheet of paper here, just to help me remember, right? Like a ratio, just like you did in math class probably. 2 and, you know, we can just put less than 1/2, right? It was a little less than 1/2, right? So now, does my block match that, right? Well, let's just measure directly onto the sheet of paper, right? Again, I'm not all the way at the bottom of the paper. I'm close to it, so I'm gonna just put my thumb where I drew my block. Put my top thumb up here, right? That's my 1, that's what I guessed. And let's see, 1, 2, 1. Oh wow, not even 2. I made this way too tall, right? And that's actually quite common for people to do when they're starting to draw. Your brain knows that that thing is a rectangle and really wants to pull it up as much as it can. And in reality, it's very thin, right? I'm sitting kind of low to the ground. It's close to my eye level. So it's very wide, but not very tall. So now how do I change this? I want to make this block match that proportion, right? That's the proportion I saw in life, 1 to 2 and just less than 1/2. So I just start making guesses, right? I just start making guesses. Take my string here and say, okay, maybe it's this tall, right? 1, 2, closer, need to take a little bit more off. 1, 2, still need to take a little bit more off. 1, 2, oh, we're getting there. That's about right here. 1, 2, just less than 1/2. So, put my thumb there. Make a mark with my charcoal pencil. All right, the bottom of my block is right there. And I'm gonna use my ruler now to really cut my block, right? Think of it like you're sculpting a block of clay and you're coming in with a wire and you're just cutting a big chunk of clay off this. So I hold my ruler up there, make sure that it's really horizontal, right? Get low so that way your eye level is even with it, and draw just a light construction line, right? That's not a real line. It's not a contour line that exists on that panel, but it's a construction line that helps me understand that all of the panel is going to be below that line. I'm also going to draw a construction line at the bottom, right? To again, really clarify where I was calling the bottom of this panel. Notice how I'm drawing these lines. I'm holding the pencil pretty far back. I'm not putting a lot of pressure down. And I'm using a very sharp pencil. Great. So now I have 4 construction lines drawn. That makes a very clear block of where this panel is going to exist in, right? So now, as I said before, draw first, measure second. The idea is that eventually over time you will need the string less and less, and that you'll need to measure less and less. We don't want to always be stuck using that. So I want you to make the guesses first, right? And then over time, as you build the neural pathways, you'll have to use the string less and less and less. So make a guess where you think those 4 points. I know my low point is going to exist somewhere on this bottom line here. I know my high point is going to exist somewhere on this line up here. I know my furthest point to the right is going to exist somewhere on this right line over here, and my furthest point to the left is going to exist at some point over here. So looking at my panel, looking at my paper, switching back and forth, kind of make a guess. You know, I think my low point is right about there. And you see, I just kind of make a little mark. I think my furthest point to the right is right about there. I think my high point is somewhere over here. And my furthest point to the left is right about there, right? And you see how I just made just little dashes real quick, making an idea of where that panel exists at. Now, how can we start looking for this stuff? Well, it's simple, right? We're going to, again, imagine construction lines. And you can make the construction line real, so to speak, by using your string, right? This is the advantage of using a string as opposed to, say, a skewer or something like that, because you can hold a real big vertical real easily. And I want to hold a string through my low point, right? Hold a big vertical string through your low point. And take a look real quick. How much of the panel exists on the right side? And how much of the panel exists on the left side, right? From my point of view, I see only a little sliver on the right of that string, and I see a lot of it on the left, right? So I want to mimic that on my drawing. One way I can measure for that is to measure the distance between my furthest point to the right, which is this point right here, and the furthest point to my lowest point right there, right? So I want to imagine that distance, right? So to do this, right, I hold my string horizontally this time. I put my right thumb on that right point, right? Again, I'm just using that side because it's the smaller side. It's the one closer to my low point. I put my right thumb on that right point, and I move my hands down, again, like they're on train tracks, completely vertically down, until my string touches my low point, right? Until the low point touches the string, and then I move my left thumb over, boom. I have my new unit of 1, right? This is the width, the distance between my furthest point to the right and my low point. And now I count over just like I did before. Moving my right thumb where my left thumb is. So 1, 2, 3, I say about 3 3/4, right? It doesn't quite, it's not almost 4. Important to note when you're measuring like this, don't try to be too accurate, right? Don't say, oh, that was, 3.866. Don't try to be that accurate with a string. Keep it to quarters, halves, maybe fifths. Oftentimes I'll do what I did there at the beginning of 2 and just less than a half. No need to try and be very accurate. This tool is just to get you in the ballpark. So let's check. Is that what I made here, right? So you see I'm measuring from my rightmost point to my low point. 1, 2, oh, way too big, right? I have this thing over way too far. Let me make this a little bit smaller. And that's where my low point actually is. I can draw a construction line through that point, a vertical construction point. construction line. And now I know that's where my low point is. Now I want to find my furthest point to the right. And this is easy. This one's easy to find. Going back to my height, low finger on my low point, coming over, top thumb on my top point, again, having my height of the whole panel, then I just move over to the side. Again, I'm moving over like my hands are on train tracks. And I ask myself, how much higher, where does that point touch the string? How much higher than my bottom thumb is it compared to how much lower from my top thumb? And when I see this, right, it's a little bit less than a quarter away from my top thumb, meaning it's a little over 3/4 of the way from my bottom thumb. So on my sheet of paper, I can mimic that, right? And see, is this about a little bit more than 3/4? Right now I could say, no, this is more than a quarter, right? Look at this. This is 1, 2, so that's way more than a quarter. I should be able to fit, 4 of those in there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, close, right? I'd say it's right about there. All right, 3/4 below, a little bit more than 3/4 below, a little bit less than a quarter above. That's what I saw. And now I can draw my first diagonal. And notice I'm going to make these a little bit darker than my construction lines, right? That's a contour line. I really want it to stick out among the construction lines. I want there to be a variation there. So now I'm going to repeat this process for the rest of the panel here. And now at this point I have the completed panel. I would go on to show students how to adjust that panel and how to start questioning how close they were, move it around, use the pastel to sort of push it around, using the pastel to create a surface, or I would show students examples like Deben corn, and then eventually even put a box on top of that panel and build off of that. But for the sake of brevity, I'm going to leave that out of the video today. So thank you for watching.